You made it back to Keys to the Basement. It is Weirdness Wednesday, and today's story is called Tree Goddess. So how it happened was, one day this peasant girl was walking through the woods like she did every day, picking flowers, watching the lakes and rivers flow, sometimes swimming in them, and then picking more flowers and going home. One day a tree goddess appeared to her and asked her to come far, far away into the light with it. At first, the girl didn't think it was safe or right to do, as she had her responsibilities to take care of. Then she got to thinking about her normal routine, doing the same thing over and over every day, and she figured she just needed to get away. What's the worst that could happen, right? After thinking about it for a long, long time, which was actually only 2 minutes of real time, she agreed to go off with the tree goddess to a land many moons away. Largo decided that she would try an adventure outside her usual, so she agreed to come, went home, packed a bag, and came back to the tree goddess. A wink, a shake, and a chocolate shake later, they were on their way. The tree goddess allowed Largo to lounge on her branches as they made the journey past the first moon, and the tree goddess had to take a break and get some water as her roots were drying out faster than she thought. And so Largo decided to go out and explore the little bit she could, and she got into some trouble, but nothing she couldn't handle, and she ran back just in time for the tree goddess to swoop down, pick her up, and they were on their way past the second moon and on to the third moon. That was where they would land safe and sound, and the tree goddess would need more water. So she landed in a flowing stream of water and absorbed as much as she could. Largo took off on another adventure yet again. Not knowing where she was, off simple-minded, it didn't take much to amuse her. The moon they were on seemed to be much like the planet they came from, but there was glitter everywhere, and so everything was shiny and sparkly, but there was no population. It didn't matter, so Largo asked the tree goddess what was up, what she needed to be done, and the tree goddess explained that she wanted to attract other tree people, not necessarily goddesses and gods, just other tree people, to this planet as it was more suitable for them to live on. And so Largo got to work doing everything she was told to do and did it in a timely manner, as the tree goddess had a tight deadline. How many days had passed, Largo was not sure. She had not kept up with the time in space. As you know, it looks the same out there. There is no day and there is no night. It's always nighttime, so human peoples had to keep track of what time it was so they would know what day it was. So not knowing what day it was and lack of sleep, Largo asked the tree goddess, was it time for the party? The tree goddess replied, no, my child. In about 3 hours, the guests will arrive for the party. You did everything perfectly, and I'm grateful for your help. Feeling pretty terrific, Largo walked away, and the tree goddess stopped her and gave her an outfit to wear to the party that night. Now, Largo found it kind of weird, but she went with it anyway. I mean, the tree goddess was nice enough to bring many moons out, keep the moon critters away from her, but somewhere deep in her heart, Largo began to miss home, as she didn't know how long she had been away. Suddenly, there were bright lights in the sky, and there were many flying tree gods and goddesses that were landing for the party. When Largo put on the dress that the tree goddess had given her, it was horizontal stripes. At least it was long, but it was blue and white striped, so Largo loved it, as blue is her favorite color. As Largo finished readying herself to go to the party, there was a knock on the door of the cave she had been staying in for shelter, and in walked another human, a man. This man was suave-looking, smooth, well-mannered man, who was dressed just as well as Largo. Largo looked at the floor as she was shy and didn't know what to do. I mean, she was in space, and having an encounter with a man, well, he might as well have been an alien. She didn't know what to do. She found an alcove in the cave and made a telepathic call to her friends, asking and begging for advice on what to do. Finding it cute, her friends told her to take a chance and just go for it. But what all would that entail? Steady in her beliefs, she was raised, and she was uneasy about the whole thing. But she just said, well, you're already here. YOLO! And so she got up and went out to the man who was still waiting for her. and he escorted her to the party where all the tree gods and goddesses were. Little did she know the evils that were waiting for her when she got there. Once the man disappeared and Largo was alone at the party and trying to mingle, she felt like she was drowning because she didn't know anybody but the tree goddesses that brought her to the planet, and she was busy. Several times did Largo attempt to leave and go back to the cave to rest, but alas, every time she would start that way to go to the cave, another tree goddess or god would bring her back. After a while, Largo wondered what happened to the man that had escorted her, as there was a song she wouldn't have minded a slow dance to. But she couldn't find him. Little did she know that there were tree goddesses that took him away to another part of the planet to torture him as tree people. Whether gods or goddesses hated humans, and Largo didn't know that. And so it was her turn for the tree gods to lure her out to the other side of the planet, away from her tree goddess friend that brought her to the planet, and began to torture her verbally, mentally, breaking her down with every word and belittling her like her life was nothing, telling her that she was worthless and that her everyday life was just useless, and no matter how many flowers she picked, they would never be enough. On the planet Sorbonne, the planet Largo came from, the reason they brought Largo to the tree planet was to use her for funnies and tortures. The tree goddesses that had brought her to the planet, they were under premise that she was just heartless and had nothing and no soul. Where Largo was under the premise that the tree people just needed help making their planet more appealing to attract other tree people. But the truth was, it was already inhabited by tree people, and the goddesses just needed entertainment. Hurt beyond belief, Largo gave up and just laid there in the mud. The stripes on her dress were meant for her to be a prisoner, and the only one that could finish her was the original tree goddess who brought her to said tree people planet. Largo started to miss her home planet, Sorbonne, and the people so much, but she was so far away, and it seemed she'd never get back. And even if she wanted to go back to Sorbonne, how would she get there, as her ride hated her and wanted to finish her off? Stuck in a quandary, Largo just wanted to sleep, and so Largo just fell asleep. She was safe when she slept. Her dreams, the peace, it was safer there where she had been mentally. And so, when the tree goddess came to finish Largo, she thought someone else had already done it. Furious, the tree goddess went postal, and she for a minute was sad about what she had done to Largo, but then was even madder that she didn't get to finish her, as Largo had finished herself mentally. And so, disappointed, the tree people, including the goddess, left the area where Largo was, and after what seemed like forever, Largo eventually woke up. I mean, what kind of story do you think I'm telling here? Serious? And when she woke up, somehow she was back on planet Sorbonne, in a hospital, unaware of where she was, and that was home. Largo freaked out and had to be calmed down. At first, she didn't understand, but then, when it all came to her at once, she began to cry uncontrollably. How it came to be was, the man that brought her to the party, Alvan, had survived his torture, too, and he was not perfect, at least he didn't think so, but Largo thought he was. Had lassoed a tiny tree god who was so very strong and very rebellious, and dared him that he could not make it back to planet Sorbonne with a human in one trip. And so, the young tree god accepted Alvan's bet, and they took off. He saw Largo laying in the mud and thought she was dead. Thinking her family would want to bury her on the planet Sorbonne and have closure, he dared the baby tree god that he could not haul 2 humans at once. And so they swooped down and picked her up. And Largo lay in the tree branches once again. To make a non-stop flight, Alvan had water to keep putting on the young tree god's roots. Finally, after returning home, Alvan had disappeared after dropping Largo off at the hospital, and the young rebellious tree god flew home. Largo wanted so much to find the man that had saved her, but how? How could she? Largo couldn't even remember his name. How rude, right? I mean, the man saved your life and you can't even remember his name. Finally, after a day or two in the hospital, Largo got out, still in search for this mysterious man, Alvin. Largo tried everything to remember who he was, and she couldn't forget what he had done for her. And she felt the need to repay him one way or another. Finally, Largo got frustrated with herself, and not knowing what to do, she turned on her phone for some comfort from friends who were video chatting with her. And she noticed a name and number that she wasn't familiar with. She went to delete it first, but then she called the number and a man answered. Largo told him the story about his phone number being in her phone, and she didn't know him, and in an instant he knew exactly who she was, and he asked if she was out of the hospital. She told him she was released into her parents' custody, as she still had some lingering issues, and he offered to come see her, and she agreed. A meeting was arranged as soon as she saw him. It all came back to her, and she passed out on the floor, as it was too much for her to handle all at once. Alvin ran to the door to help her, and then he met her father, who was angry that his daughter had passed out at sight of this man. Daddy didn't know that this was the man that saved his daughter's life, but being the good Christian man Largo's father was, he let the man in to have a sit-down talk, and Mama helped Largo to the couch, covered her in a comforter blanket. Largo listened to the story that Alvin told about his adventure getting to the Tree People planet, and it turns out he was lured the same way Largo was, as he had the same kind of life, just doing the same thing all the time, the same routine, different people. Alvin was sitting on the couch at the end of Largo's feet. He wanted to make sure she was okay. Largo never used to sleep when she was home. She was a night owl and a morning person, as she just stayed up thinking. She was always going to miss something if she slept. Her parents knew that, but with Alvin sitting at her feet, she felt comfortable enough to just slip into a nap. And so, for a while, she slept, and Alvin was still there when she woke up, and she felt so refreshed they went for a walk. It was the middle of the afternoon, and on planet Sorbonne, it's like autumn. So Largo's mom insisted on a shoulder cover, and her dad gave Alvin a sweater. And they went out for a walk. Alvin showed Largo that the flowers she had been picking were edible, and so the flowers that they picked together, they ate more than they brought home. And so after returning to the house, Alvin had to leave, but he offered to keep in touch with Largo. Not knowing what to do, she let him go, and hoped that one day he would come back. But will he? We don't know this part of the story. It's under construction, and will return later, but I promise it will be later in the day on planet Sorbonne. Thank you for tuning in for Weirdness Wednesday. This is Keys to the Basement. I want to go ahead and make a shout out to my buddy, Ashley. His vlog is Ashtoons the Vlog. ASHTOONS the Vlog, VLOG, not blog, but video blog. He gave me a shout out earlier in vlog 124. Really appreciate that, man. I hope you enjoyed this half of the story. Tune in next week for the rest of it. Remember, later that day on planet Sorbonne.